So it's been a while since I've cleaned my shop, about 6 months, and once again I have a big mess all over, and there are a few things that we could really use some help lifting and moving. And I got this high-low yesterday. It was pretty much a freebie. I got $100 into hauling it here. I'm gonna need to return this tank, so I'm gonna have to look for another tank. And then I paid $70 for the battery that was just recently replaced. So that's that. I was going to show you how it started and how it doesn't run the greatest, but last night when it stalled, I left the key on. So my battery's a little low, and I'm guessing my hours probably racked up a couple, but we'll see. Where are we at here? 1695 and 9/10. So eventually I'll have to check that and see if it's working. But there are two other high-lows in the back barn, and unfortunately the stand-up high-low is a 36-volt electric, and it has had some wiring issues, and I can't find a manual for it, and every single wire on it is white. So troubleshooting a bundle of wires this big doesn't really work very well. And the other one is a sit-down 24-volt electric, and it works, but it needs a battery, and a used battery is upwards of $2,000. So I don't really feel like paying that at all. We'll let that charge for a little bit and crank it again. But basically what I understand is this thing just needs a tune-up for the most part, and then it should run okay. This has got a points ignition underneath this distributor cap. So all things considered, even though it's a distributor and it has 4 cylinders, pretty much you do the same type of ignition as you do a single cylinder Kohler. Perfect. I know how to do those. After a few minutes on the battery squeezer, let me see what this does now. So it just wants to, but it doesn't. You know what I mean? That's with just a little bit of pressure on the throttle pedal. And it just dies. So that's that. That's where our starting point is. Now these are pretty simple deals as far as the propane goes. I'm not too worried about that. They are liquid cooled through this little regulator deal, and so as long as there's coolant through them, they stay clean. They do everything they need to. We're gonna go ignition based. We're gonna pop that distributor cap, check out the points, see how worn that cap is and the rotor, and see if there's anything we can just clean up. Now, the rotor looks pretty clean. Let's check out the cap. The cap has some corrosion, some wear on those little spots of ignition, but it's not terrible. I could probably clean that up with a little bit of Scotch-Brite. Now, not exactly knowing, but just assuming the front of the engine where the water pump is cylinder 1 and the back is cylinder 4. I just made 1 paint mark, 2 paint marks, 3 paint marks, and 4 paint marks. So I can just pop them wires off and get that cap out of the way. Now, if you've never seen this trick before, I highly recommend you pay attention. But these are the ignition points right here, and they've got a little bit of dirtiness on them. So we're going to take this dollar bill and we're just going to work it like that. And hopefully this will polish those points without being abrasive to them. We don't want to use anything like sandpaper because we don't want to embed grit into there. We want to clean the filth off. I went ahead and pulled the spark plugs as well, and it's kind of funny. This number 1 spark plug is kind of wet. The rest of them are pretty dry and rusty. And if I can find myself a set of D14 spark plugs at the parts store, I might just replace those. But I'd like to monitor that. It doesn't really smell like anything. That's the kind of weird part. It smells like a propane engine, but sometimes we think maybe my sniffer's broken. But I don't smell oil. I don't smell coolant. Just smell engine. Now, since I have no spark plugs and I have open sparks, I disconnected that orange wire that runs to my propane valve. So now I can just see if I have decent spark on them points. Yeah, I don't really. I don't have very good spark at all. This is clearly not a permanent fix, but the parts store did not have any D14 spark plugs today. We'll get those later. So I just cleaned them up and I flushed them out with some brake clean, and we're gonna slap them back in. So I used a spark tester off of just the coil wire, and my coil spark is very intermittent, very weak. My number 4 spark plug spark is non-existent. So I'm going to see if this is an internally or externally resisted coil and see if maybe there's something I can swap out and get better spark. So I have removed these points, and I don't know if I'm going to be doing better or worse for them, but you can see that big pit in the middle as I'm filing them down, and that is not a whole lot better. So I'm going to see if I can clean this up. Otherwise, I don't know if I'll be able to find points like this at the hardware store or at the parts store in town or online somewhere. But I'd really like to get this thing running a little bit. This is clearly not amazing, but it's cleaner, so maybe I'll be able to make a little bit of spark, a little bit of noise, get it to run a little bit. Somehow, through all this wiring, I don't know, I have lost my ignition power source to this LP solenoid and to the coil. But if I jump this with a positive wire, I get that. So I don't know if I'll be able to set the camera down and give this a shot. I guess that's something, maybe. And give it just a little bit of throttle. I also have no idea what my points were set at. I just whipped them together, whipped them apart. I've been trying to clean the shop, so in like 2 days, my wife can have a little bit of a work gathering here. Well, my local parts store had this ABC 328 tune-up kit with a points and condenser from Steiner Tractor, and luckily it was in stock. They didn't even have a price on it. They had to call Steiner for a price. And let's see here. Hopefully that fits. It looks like it's the same, but my little tag here did not match that kit in the book. They didn't have that tag in the book. So hopefully we're gonna be onto something. Me filing the points, they were just too far gone. There was nothing to do. So undo a screw, and this little plate comes out, and then I have to remove my ground wire here that goes to the coil, and then I'll be able to get this point set out and replaced and put back in. Now I still don't know what my desired gap is. I'm guessing 20 thou is a good starting point, and we'll go from there, but I need consistent spark to be able to get anywhere. Well, I guess it was wrong for a reason. It just doesn't quite line up on that screw. It also doesn't quite line up for my ground clamp. Dang it, dang it, dang it. So if we do a little overlay from the center of that post, gee, I'm shaky on the camera this morning. From the center of that post to the points is the same. And then also my wiper for the distributor is on center line as well. I know it's hard to see, but if I go from there to there, all of that's in line. All my geometry is the same. My issue is that my mounting bracket tab needs to be opened up. And then also, if I go from here to here, my spring, when I lay it in place, is a little bit different. I might be able to just bend the spring, but when I put the new one in, my screw lines up way over here. So maybe I'll just try to spring that out like this one is. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. But if I can just open that up with a die grinder, I might be in luck. I called Steiner, and Steiner said that they don't carry a point set for this distributor. It'd be like 180 for an electronic ignition, and then 50 for a hot coil. And then I need to have graphite plug wires. And when I stack all of that up, I have $100 into hauling this here. I've got 20 bucks into the spark plugs. I've got $13 into this point set. I got 70 bucks into the battery, and I still need to find a propane tank. This one's on loan. But when I'm looking at this, my money in ignition might double the cost of this high-low. So we're going to try to work with what we have. We're going to open up this tab. If I lose 13 bucks today, I've lost more on worse. So I was able to get that ground spring sprung, and as far as my tab here goes, all I have to do is just open a little bit of that up with a die grinder, and I should have my adjustment I need. Now I guess it would be wise to set this in the distributor and just verify that my wiper and everything's going to align, but gee, that looks like it's going to be a winner. Now obviously there's a lot of moving parts, there's not many moving parts. Once I think I get this set, it's not going to move anywhere. So I think that if I clearance where that black is, it's going to give me enough adjustment. Now my screws that are holding this in are not clocked, but that way I can get to where I'm on my high point on my wiper. So I'll be able to set my gap at 20 thou, and then I'll be able to move this over. Otherwise, the compression stroke, if I try to bump the starter, it always goes past that high spot. Always goes past. So that's my fix. Desperate times, desperate measures. I do believe that this will be enough clearance to get this operating. As for holding it down, I took the little backer off of a electric plug screw, and that's going to work just great. Preliminary fitment, my little grinder work was not enough. I'm gonna have to take the nub off the inside of that a little bit more, but otherwise everything's going to fit just great. Okay, go back the other way a little bit. See if I can see it. Okay, I have it all back together, and I still have to address the ignition issue, but for now I've got this jumper wire clamped to the positive on the battery. I have my new points and condenser under the cap. I have new plugs. I set it to 20 thou gap. That's just a guesstimate. I don't know if that's going to be good or not, but let's just give this a whirl. Propane's on. Click. Give it a little bit of throttle. It's kind of chilly in here. I messed around with the points gap a little bit. Let's give this a whirl. I think I still need to shorten the gap. I might be off. Might be totally wrong. I would assume, as much as this thing has run in the past, that the distributor did not move, but maybe I've got to take my little hold down and advance my whole distributor. I don't know. Maybe I need to have a set gap and then have a set timing. If that's the case, I might be doing it all wrong. That way just a little. Now, if I had a timing light, if I had a manual, if I had timing marks, if I knew what I was doing, it's gonna be a whole lot quicker, I'm sure. But this is all kind of just knowledge and speculation, maybe a little luck. Take 1429. I don't like that. So it still won't idle. It's a little bit more responsive. We're just gonna keep getting a little tighter, a little tighter. Probably should have used something other than plastic for that washer on my little hold down. If it does tend to change or move, I might end up actually welding up that gap and putting a better arc in it, so that way the screw can hold on to something. But I didn't really want to weld around the points and either set something dirty in there or do anything harmful like that. So that's that. I guess I was like a half a turn loose on that point screw too, so that probably didn't help. Rotors are important. Don't forget your rotor. Really love to take this thing for a hot lap today. There. I like that. I think I'm going to check into maybe a little bit of a throttle adjustment, and I want to just kind of investigate the system because it seems like the idle's just low in general. Then again, I also have to figure out what's up with the ignition, why I lost power. There are a couple of fuses I found last night, and all of those were still intact. I do admit it could be a blown fuse because I was playing under the distributor and I forgot that the ignition was still on, and I did see a spark. So I could have blown a fuse that I just haven't found yet. But normally if I do this, I have a volt gauge that comes up, and I don't. So I'm gonna get my meter out. I'm gonna play with my meter and be the little electrician fairy and sprinkle some magic dust on this thing and pick things up, put things down, drive around here pretty soon. Look at this guy just marking things off the list. I found the governor linkage, and there was just a little set screw. My guess is idle. I put about a half a turn into it, and that really cleaned up the idle. Wiring. You know what flashlights do? Flashlights make you a liar. I thought that was fine last night, but apparently it's not. So I am doing my semi-annual shop cleanup. It's starting to look decent, like it could be a hangout again. And I've got a sweep underneath that ILO. So it's been sitting pretty much all day. I do have a cap and rotor sitting down at the parts store, so that's going to help a little bit more. But from a cold start, let's see what happens. I think I'm gonna like that. I'm pretty sure so far I am into it. $100 for the wrecker bill to get it here. $70 for the reconditioned battery. $20 for spark plugs. $13 for a points and condenser kit that I had to modify. I don't know what the cap and rotor is going to cost, but the new points for that 4706 distributor are like $34, which I think is funny. The fact that I was able to modify a $13 set, whatever. Maybe $250 when I'm all in. It's going to be well worth having something that I can work on. If I have to, I can put a Kohler under the hood of that thing, I bet. I could probably put a Harbor Freight 26 horsepower Predator in it and be done. But to have something that I can work on that has simple circuits, that has simple check fluids, change oils, things like that, I'm really excited about that. It's going to be awesome. And that's that. It's time to see about getting rid of the 2 electric high-lows that are non-operable in the back and just making room for this. That's that. Have a nice day. Thanks for watching.